Okay, again we are in Report from Iron Mountain, and this is Section 5, the Functions of War. As we have indicated, the preeminence of the concept of war as the principal organizing force in most societies has been insufficiently appreciated. This is also true of its extensive effects throughout the many non-military activities of society. These effects are less apparent in complex industrial societies like our own than in primitive cultures, the activities of which can be more easily and fully comprehended. We propose in this section to examine these non-military, implied, and usually invisible functions of war to the extent that they bear on the problems of transition to peace for our society. The military or ostensible function of the war system requires no elaboration. It serves simply to defend or advance the national interest by means of organized violence. It is often necessary for a national military establishment to create a need for its unique powers, to maintain the franchise, so to speak. And a healthy military apparatus requires regular exercise by whatever rationale seems expedient to prevent its atrophy. The non-military functions of the war system are more basic. They exist not merely to justify themselves, but to serve broader social purposes. If and when war is eliminated, the military functions it has served will end with it. But its non-military functions will not. It is essential, therefore, that we understand their significance before we can reasonably expect to evaluate whatever institutions may be proposed to replace them. Economic. The production of weapons of mass destruction has always been associated with economic waste. The term is pejorative, since it implies a failure of function. But no human activity can properly be considered wasteful if it achieves its contextual objective. The phrase wasteful but necessary, applied not only to war expenditures but to most of the unproductive commercial activities of our society, is a contradiction in terms. The attacks that have since the time of Samuel's criticism of King Saul been leveled against military expenditures as waste may well have concealed or misunderstood the point that some kinds of waste may have a larger social utility. In the case of military waste, there is indeed a larger social utility. It derives from the fact that the wastefulness of war production is exercised entirely outside the framework of the economy of supply and demand. As such, it provides the only critically large segment of the total economy that is subject to complete and arbitrary central control. If modern industrial societies can be defined as those which have developed the capacity to produce more than is required for their economic survival, regardless of the equities of distribution of goods within them, military spending can be said to furnish the only balance wheel with sufficient inertia to stabilize the advance of their economies. The fact that war is wasteful is what enables it to serve this function. And the faster the economy advances, the heavier this balance wheel must be. This function is often viewed, over simply, as a device for the control of surpluses. One writer on the subject puts it this way: why is war so wonderful? Because it creates artificial demand. The only kind of artificial demand, moreover, that does not raise any political issues. War, and only war, solves the problem of inventory. The reference here is to shooting war, but it applies equally to the general war economy as well. It is generally agreed, concludes more cautiously the report of a panel set up by the U.S. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, that the greatly expanded public sector since World War II, resulting from heavy defense expenditures, has provided additional protection against depressions since this sector is not responsive to contraction in the private sector and has provided a source of buffer or balance wheel in the economy. The principal economic function of war, in our view, is that it provides just such a flywheel. It is not to be confused in function with the various forms of fiscal control, none of which directly engages vast numbers of men and units of production. It is not to be confused with massive government expenditures and social welfare programs. Once initiated, such programs normally become integral parts of the general economy and are no longer subject to arbitrary control. But even in the context of the general civilian economy, war cannot be considered wholly wasteful. Without a long-established war economy, and without its frequent eruption into large-scale shooting war, most of the major industrial advances known to history, beginning with the development of iron, could never have taken place. Weapons technology structures the economy. According to the writer cited above, nothing is more ironic or revealing about our society than the fact that hugely destructive war is a very progressive force in it. War production is progressive because it is production that would not otherwise have taken place. It is not so widely appreciated, for example, that the civilian standard of living rose during World War II. This is not ironic or revealing, but essentially a simple statement of fact. How come our economy is not rising now? Oh, I guess these wars don't count. It should also be noted that war production has a dependably stimulating effect outside itself. Far from constituting a wasteful drain on the economy, war spending, considered pragmatically, has been a consistently positive factor in the rise of gross national product and of individual productivity. A former Secretary of the Army has carefully phrased it for public consumption thus: if there is, as I suspect there is, a direct relation between the stimulus of large defense spending and a substantially increased rate of growth of gross national product, it quite simply follows that defense spending per se might be countenanced on economic grounds alone, as a stimulator of the national metabolism. Actually, the fundamental non-military utility of war in the economy is far more widely acknowledged than the scarcity of such affirmations as that quoted above would suggest. And we'll pick up in the next video with Section 5, the functions of war. Hope you hang in there. This is an interesting book.